Hello and welcome to Raising Those Spirits. I'm Steve,
I'm Sam.
and this week we will be talking about road trips to end out our summer.
Woohoo! Summer vacations over.
Because really,
Not that it ever really began.
yeah, I can't believe there's only 4 months left in 2021. I'm still processing 2020, I feel like.
Yeah, it's really weird that 2021 is wrapping up. Like we're getting to the wrap up point. That's how you always feel at the end of the summer because we're quickly coming upon holiday season.
Yeah, school's
Um,
about to start up.
School's about to start. The holidays are going to be here before you know it. The year is ending. And yeah, it felt like a sort of half year after the non-year that 2020 was. Like, it still didn't feel, well, for the most of it, we were still pretty much locked down, but it feels like it's just ramping up so slowly. And also, in the face of potentially stopping again with Delta.
My company sent out a thing being like, we're still tentatively planning on reopening in September. I was like, that's not happening.
Yeah, I've been hearing tale at my work that they're like, oh yeah, the new boss, the new president of the school, just thinking that they want to start having people come back. Probably not in the fall, but in the spring, so it'd be like January. I'm like, all right, well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a negative Nelly, and I'm still, keeping it safe. But like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, I have an opportunity to career shift back to academia right now and work at some universities. And honestly, one of the big drawbacks from me not wanting to do that is the fact that I'm like, I don't want to have to go to a college full of people and be there with them in person.
Yeah, college students are fantastic. I love them so much. Have devoted my career to college students. At the same time, they're not super great at making healthy choices. I'll
Yes.
say that.
I feel
It's
like you
just
go to
like,
college to become better at making healthy choices, which means the entirety college is you making poor choices to learn from later.
yeah, you have to make a lot of mistakes in college so that you know how to not make mistakes when you're out in the world. But man, between 18 and 21, you're really screwing stuff up. And it used to be, sure, there was a certain level of risk that you could take that we all took. I mean, we were all teenagers in our early 20s once. And it's just in 2020, wow, you got to really not take those risks, guys.
Yeah.
You really got to stop going to these parties.
I know it is not feasible or realistic, but there is something amazing. I mean, for most people, I mean, in general, it can happen. It did happen. There is something amazing about meeting your significant other in college. I met my wife the first day of college, and we were just, you know, inseparable for like the entirety of that time period of our lives. And that helps us remarkably because there's so many times where like, hey, remember that time you did that thing in college, and you just kind of like bring it back up as a lesson that it's you have a lifelong person that is going to remind you of that lesson you were supposed to learn in college that you have forgotten to learn for a moment. When you're with someone that you were with in college, they can be like, hey, idiot, you figured this one out, it went poorly. And you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's true.
Oh, man.
So
Uh,
yeah,
all right. So, spooky
summers.
road trips is the theme of the week. It's
Yeah,
summer coming to a close.
I mean, we either had to close out summer with it, or we had to wait till spring break. Those are really the two road trip times a year. I feel like, at least in the horror movies, you're on spring break road trip, or it's like the end of summer. You're getting one last thing in before you go back.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean, like, you don't want to do a winter road trip because that's just going to be. I mean, that's not fun.
That's really not
Stuck
fun
in the
most
snow.
places. Okay.
Fall is good. Fall is for leaf peeping.
Yeah,
It's not
but
like a
like
road trip, but it's just like you go drive around and look at leaves. That's
that's
what
like
I
a
like to do in the fall.
weekend road trip though. That's not like a full-on road trip. Like I remember in
Yeah.
college, we went on a spring break road trip for 2 weeks, and we ended up at the end of week one. I ended up with you in Washington D.C., and then progressively. Well, I started off in Florida, ended up in
Mhm.
DC, and then ended up in Jersey, and then ended up in Boston to finish out spring break. So I did like most of the eastern seaboard over that 2 week road trip for spring break.
Oh, it's a lot of driving.
It was a lot of driving, but it was very worth it. It was very memorable. I have a lot of fond memories of that time period. And you know, go out and
The
road trip
last big,
if you're young enough to do it and
yeah,
you're listening to a parenting podcast.
the last big road trip I did was probably about 10 years ago. Me and my college roommate, Little Sam, we did a road trip around. We started in Denver and we went to New Mexico and Utah. Where was it? Utah? Yeah. And we were basically going around different to going to breweries. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I saw a lot of mountains. I saw a lot of desert. I would definitely recommend if you ever have the opportunity to get out to the Rocky Mountains, just drive around, go to different breweries. It was a blast.
I think the last time I did a road trip was with my wife about like 7 or 8 years ago, and we did theme parks. So we hit Busch Gardens, we went down in Virginia, and then we went down to Florida, and we hit Disney and Universal, and we just kind of did like a loop of stopping at theme parks and going on roller coasters, and it was really immature and it was really awesome. If
So what spooky family stuff have you been doing, Steve?
Okay, so I know I've talked up Hilda a lot. I
Hmm.
finally I worked through everything that's come to America. We finished season two. Because I had actually only seen like the first 4 or 5 episodes. I had just enjoyed it so much I kept pushing it. But we really pushed through it and watched a lot of it, and it is so good. But it ends on a big cliffhanger, and I'm like, when is season three getting here? I am fully invested in this, and I need more of it. It is absolutely delightful. It's, I think, more delightful for me and my wife to a degree because we are Norwegian and it is very centered around Norwegian folklore.
Hmm.
And so we just get a big kick out of that too. But cannot recommend it enough. Watch Hilda. To fill the void, we started Scooby Doo Mysteries Incorporated,
I
which
love that show.
I'm one episode away from the end of the first season, and I haven't gotten to watch it fully. Like, we've been putting it on for my son while we work, and I've been very distracted by it because it is so good. But I am going to have to sit down and do, like, a full on rewatch because it's a Scooby Doo with continuity if you haven't seen it before. They made it in, like, 2009 and it is kind of a reboot, but they do a lot of nods and acknowledgments of the old 1960s and 70s series. But every episode ties in. There's an overarching seasonal mystery that they're trying to solve, and it's so good.
Yeah, I checked that out. That was one of my first. That was probably my first COVID binge. That was my first week working from home, first or second week, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to be working from home for a couple of weeks. I might as well get comfortable on the couch. And I was like, I'm not going to get into any of my hard work. I'm just going to get like kind of my junk work done while I'm at home, so I can kind of relax, and I'll do it with do it with a movie or a TV show on it. And I ended up binging all of Scooby Doo Mystery Inc. That point, and I was so blown away by how legitimately good it was. Like it's still a cartoon, uh, but yeah, there's continuity. There's parts that are dark. Like they like I wouldn't recommend it for little kids. It's definitely more of a young adult program. And
Yeah,
obviously, me as a non-young adult got plenty out of it. It's such a fun show. It's
it
such a cool show.
you're 100% right because it's rated Y7, but
Ooh,
honestly,
that seems wrong.
that seems wrong. I was like sitting there today thinking if this was on when we were younger, like if this was part of Toonami, I would have gone home after school and watched this. Back in like the heydays of Toonami when we were in like middle school and high school,
Sure, when we were
I
early teens.
I would have absolutely not blinked if you had put this with the Toonami lineup. Just like,
Scooby Doo is so versatile and it is so lasting. We've talked a bunch of times about if we're gonna do a Scooby Doo episode, and we've decided we have to do something bigger for Scooby Doo because there's just
yes.
so much of it.
We're gonna actually have to have an entire production meeting just about Scooby Doo because how do you even tackle that subject matter? Like,
Yeah,
there's
it's
just so much. And again, they do a great job nodding to the old things. Like, there's a museum in town that is like an homage to all the old villains. And there's an episode where they walk by Scrappy Doo, like a statue of Scrappy Doo,
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
and Daphne is just like, "Oh, Fred, remember it?" He's like, "No, Daphne, we swear we'd never speak of that again." And he just rushes her out of the room, and it's like, it's this perfect little moment, and I laughed really hard. And but where do you jump in? Like, what do we cover? What do we compare? There's so much
Yeah.
Scooby Doo. So yeah, that this will be a whole episode. This is just a snippet into that 90 minutes. I think the
Yeah, no, I mean we'll have to do like an episode for each iteration, I think.
Oh my god, that's
Which
literally
would
like
be its own podcast.
that's its own podcast. Literally, there's at least 10 incarnations of Scooby Doo. I did enjoy, there was one episode where it is Scooby has like a fever dream and they go back to the old original
Oh right, they
Scooby
go to
Doo
the old
art
animation.
and
Yes.
they have a mystery off with all the other old Hanna-Barbera cartoon teen groups. So like Jabberjaw's there, uh, the Speed Buggy is there, that Captain Caveman and his crew is there. There's the ghost whose name I can't remember at the moment. Heavens to Murgatroyd, that guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and it just they all team up and solve a mystery together, which I thought was awesome. But yeah, there's just so much. Like, that's the thing. We could do all Scooby Doo episodes and then do another thing on Scooby Doo rip-offs, but they're not rip-offs. They're the same company that's just trying to cash
Well,
in.
yeah, Hanna-Barbera was doing so much of that in the 60s.
They were like, what if we just plagiarized ourselves?
No, some
And
of the character designs, one of the characters on Speed Buggy, I swear, is literally the same character design for Shaggy.
yes, he
It might
looks
have,
exactly
yeah,
like
it's
Shaggy.
exactly the same. And
That is on purpose.
they had an earlier show about like a mystery, underwater mystery team
That was
with, I think, a
Jabberjaw.
whale. No, no, not Jabberjaw. It was a different one. It was like a whale, and the whale's name was Scooby. Because there's an episode, I think, in season 2 of Mr. Inc. where they meet up with those people, and they're like, well, our Scooby came first. They have a different Scooby who's a whale, or I think he's a submarine in this.
Oh
This
my
show
god.
gets really out there in season 2. Like, if you like, season 1 of Mystery Inc. is out there, season 2 is out there. It is out there real far. So yeah,
I'm
we'll have to do. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like Scooby. It's not even Scooby movies. It's like Velma Daphne spin-off movies, like
good
YA spin-off movies.
because they are the only two who are worth your time in Mystery Incorporated. I cannot stand Shaggy in Mystery Incorporated. He's such a scumbag. And I feel
He's
bad
yeah.
because it's Matthew Lillard's first shot at Shaggy, I think. Casey Kasem retired, and Matthew Lillard now does the cartoon Shaggy, and he does a great job, but Shaggy's a scumbag now.
I didn't think he was so bad.
Well, in this
Uh,
incarnation, he's dating Velma, and he treats her like crap.
she doesn't treat him so good. Let's not get into this
We'll
because
get
we're
to
gonna have to save this
this.
for one day. We're gonna do an episode. I have a lot of thoughts on Velma's character in Mystery Inc. But I will tell you, like, once you get to the end of season 2, it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. I mean, as much sense as it's going to make. It's a show about a talking dog.
Yeah, that is true. So I
Oh,
guess
snap.
aside from Scooby Doo, my last thing is we have a flock of turkey vultures that live on my property now,
Oh, I hate that. I hate
and
what you just said.
they look so awesome. They're so big. You don't realize how big they are, and then one of them will fly across the sky and black out the sun. And I have like a dead tree in the woods behind my house, behind one of those old New England walls, and
Of course you do.
one of them like flew up and landed on the dead gnarled branch and was looking down, and I was just like, yes, this is so spooky. and
That's
then
terrible.
the dead gnarled branch broke and crumbled off, and it almost fell to its death, and it swooped away. But it
I mean, they can fly.
yeah, I know,
No,
but I
that's
don't
the
think it was
major benefit of being
expecting.
a bird.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just very, very weirdly spooky that there's like I think 8 of them on the property, and I mean
Swear to God, you live in a freaking zoo or something, man.
we have like a mountain state park behind us, but like we have wetlands between because of all the runoff that comes off the mountain. So they probably have great pickings in the wetlands. But
Ugh,
yeah,
vultures.
vultures, turkey vultures. So what have you been up to?
So this weekend, as you might remember, was my daughter's birthday party,
Yeah, it was a blast.
which was not spooky in general. It was unicorn themed, which was super a lot of fun. Something so back at my daughter's second birthday party, which was the last big birthday party she had, because her third birthday party we didn't really end up having because of COVID. Back during her second birthday party, my dad was helping me get everything set up, and he comes over. He's like, "Sam, you got a big dead squirrel in your yard." I was like, "A dead squirrel? Oh no!" And I go over, and sure enough, I find what's left of a squirrel. It looked like a cat had probably gone to the poor thing. I had never found like a dead animal in my yard before. So I was like, okay, great. Let's get, I think we got like a shovel or gloves or something. We picked it up, we got it into a big trash bag and threw it into the trash, and it was sad, but I was like, I just got to make sure I get this cleaned up before my daughter sees. Cut to this weekend. I'm in my kitchen, trying to get some dips together, and my wife comes in. She goes, "Sam, there's a dead rabbit in the yard." I was like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, your friends were helping me set up, and they came over and they're like, there is a dead bunny rabbit just in the middle of the yard." And my first thought was like, like baby bunnies, they'll just freeze and they'll pretend they're dead if they're scared. I was like, maybe it's still alive, and she goes, "No, it's dead." I was like, okay. So she gets a bunch of trash bags and she cleans it up. And again, she toss it into the trash bin before my daughter can see because it would make her sad. But now I'm a little worried that maybe there's like some sort of like Damien Omen thing going on, because it's super weird that 2 birthday parties in a row we would find dead rodents in our yard, right? Like that's not normal.
And I don't know if you were around for this, but we definitely speculated about this at the party. I was like, is it every time she has a birthday party? Is it every other year? Because it's been 2 years. Also, I noticed the animals are getting progressively larger. Is that
Yeah.
gonna? I
No,
mean,
I mean,
that'll get out of hand fast. Once you start getting up in animal size, like that gets
sure,
exponential.
because what's next? A raccoon? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean it's gonna get bigger. Like,
and after
one
that,
day
it's
it's
like a
gonna like if she's
dog.
gonna turn 16. Yeah, if she's gonna turn 16, I'm gonna find a dead mule in the yard. Like, who is sacrificing animals to my child?
Oh, that's
And
great.
like,
Her sweet 16. She's got a horse head under the sheets.
it's like full Godfather. It's all for you, Damien. It's all for you. It's just like it gets out of hand really quick. So if anybody out there is sacrificing live animals to my family, just stop. We don't want you to. Please stop doing it. It's really creeping us out.
Well,
So
we'll have
that
to
was my.
wait at least 2 years to find out.
Well, no, I mean, like, we'll see at her fifth birthday
Well,
party.
that's why I
At her
said it.
fifth birthday
So
party, if there's
far,
a raccoon in my lawn.
it's only happened on even years.
True. It wasn't even her birthday. It was a week later. Her birthday was, a week ago.
So maybe it is every time she has a party.
Yeah, that must be it.
We'll find out next
What
year.
spirit are you racing? What spirit are you racing, Steve? I need a drink after that.
Okay. So, I had a really bad day. And so this drink that I'm raising would have been great. I picked it expecting it to be great, but honestly, I forgot to make it. So I'm going to tell you about the drink. It's been a day, folks, and I'm sorry. I actually almost made it last night, and I was like, no. No, I'm going to save it for tomorrow. Tomorrow it's going to be like 95 degrees. This sounds amazing. I'm gonna drink it then, and I just did not get a chance. So the cocktail I had planned on drinking is the Route 66 cocktail, in theme with our road trip week. It's a refreshing
Mm-hmm.
cocktail featuring a citrusy combination of lemonade, orange juice, pineapple juice, gin, and vodka. So you take 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of gin, 2 ounces of orange juice, 2 ounces of pineapple juice, and 2 ounces of lemonade. Shake and pour over ice. And that just sounds amazing for a hot day like today. I love lemonade. I
Hmm.
love pineapple juice, orange juice, citrus type of summer drinks. So, for some weird reason, I've never thought of combining them, but it makes perfect sense to me. If I made this and it wasn't good, I would not understand it.
Mm.
That's
No,
just
that sounded really good.
that's my thoughts on it. I'm like lemon, pineapple, and orange go together. Lemonade and orange juice, I know for a fact, go together. I've never had pineapple and orange juice not work together. I don't see this not working. So maybe
Right. Well, once you try it, let us
I'll
know. You gotta
report
give us
back
an
in the
update.
next episode. I'll just give a quick update to how it was, and then I'll give you my next drink. But uh, try the Route 66 cocktail and leave us feedback on how you like it. What are you drinking?
All right. Well, for me, I'm drinking one of my very favorite summer beers. You know what? Like, let's not say one of. I'm drinking my favorite summer beer, which is Cronenberg Blanc. It is a wheat beer from France. I don't know why I put that accent on it. It's a wheat beer
France!
from France. I think that's because of it's because of Better Off Dead. I can't say France without doing the Better Off Dead joke. Did you see that movie?
Oh, I love Better Off Dead.
How good is Better Off Dead?
It's so good.
So it's a French wheat beer with a twist of citrus. I discovered this at one of my favorite restaurants near me. I started drinking it a lot before my daughter was born, when I was still going out to bars during the week. So I started drinking this at the Old Magoon Saloon, which is one of my favorite restaurants in the greater Boston area. And it is just so citrusy and refreshing. It got real popular in the States, I think, after the one of the more recent World Cups, because there was a ton of ads for it. You have to look for it a little bit. You can't find it in just every liquor store I found. You have to go to a liquor store that has kind of I think, a more niche beer selection. Again, because it's a it's a French beer. It's not particularly well known in the States. But I will tell you, an ice cold Cronenberg Blanc is my absolutely favorite beer to sip during the summer, because it is so refreshing. I'm drinking one right now because I had a bunch of tall boys in my fridge.
Okay, let's jump in. What did we do for our road trip, Sam?
Well, I was going to attempt to do something different than you, and I failed. So we both ended up watching So Weird, um, a Disney television series from the late 90s, early 2000s, about a family of rock musicians who travel the country in a bus, and the daughter of the family is also running a paranormal website and solving spooky mysteries.
So, yeah, I'd never even heard of this show before I started researching spooky road trip stuff. It ran from 1999 to 2001 for 3 seasons. And yeah, so the daughter and her brother are not in the band. Their mom is a rock star, and they are on the road for her comeback tour for season one. That's the plot of season one. Is they're on tour, and I don't know if she runs the website or if she just posts a lot to this website.
I think
But
it's her website.
yeah, so she is on this website, and as they're on the road going to different cities, she runs into different paranormal things that she deals with and works with the people on the website to try and solve. And I had a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah, this was the show. I was reading on I
Oh
was
my
reading up a
god,
bunch on the history of this show.
there's so much to talk about outside of the episode that we watched.
Yeah, okay. Which did we both watch the pilot?
We both watched the pilot.
Yeah,
So
okay.
let's go over the pilot and then do a deeper dive into how crazy this show was.
Okay, let's talk about this pilot. It was, I mean, I enjoyed it. I got a kick out of it. I really did.
It was it had such a 90s opening.
It's the 90s thing,
It was
90s thing.
it was like the X-Files mixed with like the opening from Judging Amy type of a show. It was like that spooky mashup, but with like a rock and roll guitar riff and occasionally jumping to characters. It did not understand what genre it wanted to be. It was like the X-Files, but radical, kids! Like,
No, no, I think that was exactly what it wanted to be. You know what it was? It was every scene at the Bronze from
yes,
Buffy.
I
You
got
know, on the
such
Buffy,
crazy Buffy vibes off of it.
right? It was exactly that. It was Buffy. I wouldn't say light. I would say it was Buffy super light. It was as light as you could get, with a generally kind of Buffy-ish premise. Definitely, it reminded me of all the scenes in Buffy where they really had to shoehorn in a musician at the Bronze, where it's just like, oh, here's a musician that's going to play well to this WB audience, but
Yes.
more geared towards elementary school, middle schoolers than Buffy being geared towards high schoolers.
Yeah, I definitely have that in my notes because at the beginning of my notes, I was like, this is definitely shot very Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like when they start in her bedroom and they're going through like all of her stuff and like that light music, I was like, oh, this is super Are You Afraid of the Dark? And by the end, I was like, this is Buffy without Buffy. This is Buffy if Buffy had never come to Sunnydale. Like, and just
Oh,
like,
sure. Like this would be like this is Teen Willow solving
mm-hmm.
mysteries on her own before Buffy showed up. Yes.
Yes.
Oh my god, I would totally watch that
Yeah,
show.
it was a
Oh
huge.
my god, I just pitched it.
I had such like it was such a weird roller coaster. So you start off with this X Files rock and roll edgy opening, and then are immediately dropped into you one of those like remember when you were in elementary school, middle school, there were like those Ken Burns documentaries, but like narrated by kids, like for kids to watch. Like you're gonna learn about the Great Chicago Fire, and they have like the Ken Burns footage rolling, but like kids are telling you about it. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I think I get what you mean.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know if I remember this specifically, but I get the vibe you're
well,
talking
that
about.
that kind of a vibe. So like it starts off with this X Files opening, drops you immediately into like cool middle school Ken Burns type of for kids production about the history of this Chicago thing. And then you're immediately dropped into like this Are You Afraid of the Dark type of an opening. And then suddenly you're in Buffy. I was just getting yanked in so many directions. I was like, "What are you?" I don't know. I don't know what mental mood to get into. You're pulling me in so many directions.
It was. I would. I don't know what night it ran, but it felt like it's a Saturday night. I've got my bowl of popcorn. 12 sort of TV show. It
Yeah,
was like your 12-year-old Saturday night plan would have been to watch So Weird.
it felt like a Friday night thing for me because Friday night was when Are You Afraid of the Dark was, and it almost feels like they were like, Are You Afraid of the Dark is coming back on Nickelodeon. We need a competitor.
And you know who I should have talked to my niece about this show because she's like in her mid 20s. So I think she would have been like just the. She was definitely the right age for it because when I logged on to my Disney Plus, I'd seen a couple of episodes that had already been watched, and I was like, "Who is watching this show?" And it turned out it was my niece when she was babysitting for us, and yeah, so she would have been, yeah, I think middle school about when that show was airing.
Yeah, that tracks. 1999, we were in high school, so she would have been 10 years younger than us. She would have.
Yeah,
Actually, I don't know when she would have watched it because we'll get into it, but it ended in 2001. It got pulled from Disney in 2003, and the first time it ever aired again was when it came back on Disney Plus.
yeah, it was okay. So yeah, we're going into
We'll
more
get
of
to
like the
that.
meta story. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
But I
Obviously, we're
don't know
very
when
excited
your
to talk
niece
about this
watched
show.
this unless she was like watching it before she was supposed to. I don't know.
That might have been. That might have been.
Um, so lots of rock and roll in this because their mom is cool.
She's super cool. She's Mackenzie Phillips. Super cool.
And so many just so much rock and roll. One of the things that pissed me off was early on her she's trying to like study or whatever, and there's like guitar riffs coming through the wall, and she like is yelling at her brother to shut up, and he comes in, and she's like, nice music, metalhead. And I'm like, that was clearly like a bluesy Stevie Ray Vaughan type of that, nothing about that was metal. As a kid who was a metalhead in 1999, what? Metal didn't sound anything like that at that time. You were just listening to a blues riff, my friend.
This was Disney Channel's what we think metal
Yes.
is.
Yeah, that immediately took me out, and I was like, "Oh, corporate." And can I say her room is way too big to be on a tour bus?
Oh my god, I had the same thought. I was like, is every room on this tour bus big? Is this tour bus like 3
So
buildings?
that's the big reveal. So it starts off, she's in her room on her bed. You do that slow pan looking at all of her toys and her spooky stuff, and then she's on her computer, and then her brother comes in. Like, she's got a desk, she's got a bed, she's got a closet, and her brother's in, and then her mom comes in and yells at them, and then there's like a weird exterior shot, and it turns out they've been on the tour bus the whole time, and you're like, what? And it's like,
What a twist.
what a twist. That child's room, that normal 90 child's room, does not fit in a tour bus at all.
If I mean, if you could have rooms that big on a bus, why would you ever have a house? Just live in a
Yeah.
bus. In
And like, you have a
reality, if you're
whole.
living on a tour bus, it's a bunk. It's a bunk above, it's not like a room.
So she has a room, her brother has a room. It seems like Clue probably has a room. Clue is her brother's best friend, who is their roadie's son. We'll get to that in a little while. But Clue seems to,
Squatch.
Clue and his family. So 6 people live on this bus.
I mean, like, that's a lot of people for living in like a house bus.
Yes, that is far too many people, and that doesn't even cover the mom's band, who I imagine
So
is on
they
another
have to have two
bus.
buses. They
They
have to
have
have a
to.
second bus. So
Which
there's a whole backup band.
which brings me to the next problem I had. So they're on a bus, but no one acts like they're on a bus. The mom immediately turns. So the kids have a fight. The mom comes in, breaks it up, and she turns to Clue and is like, Clue, if you see your parents up front, could you tell them? And I was just like, folks, you live on a tour bus. They are less than 50 feet away. What do you mean if you run into your parents? You know where they are. They can't be
If you
farther
talk
than.
loud enough, they'll hear you.
Yeah, they can't be farther than 50 feet from you. She's like, I want to know when we're arriving in Chicago. And I'm like, walk 10 feet down the aisle and ask them. You're on a bus.
You're all on the same bus.
What? What do you. What?
We're very
Like,
frustrated by this.
I was
It was
so.
incredible.
My wife and I were watching this, and I kind of tried to like watch this by myself, just because like my wife was putting my son down, and I didn't want to necessarily expose her to this if it was going to be really bad. And she came down and she caught it just in time, and she was like, "I can't believe you were going to watch this without me. This is making me so angry."
I'm gonna watch this entire series now. Like
Yeah.
based on this, it's so ridiculous. We should move off from the bus because we could talk about the bus all day. Because the
Okay.
bus is apparently it's a TARDIS. It has to. So their bus is a TARDIS. We're
Their
gonna
bus
make
is a
that assumption.
TARDIS.
Their
So
bus is a TARDIS.
some more world building. They arrive in Chicago, and you meet Clue's parents. Clue's mom is the band manager, and Clue's dad is the head roadie slash bus driver slash also their teacher because they're all being homeschooled from the bus, and he is teaching the kids, the head roadie.
Like he's got other stuff to do. I was like, when do you like? Why are
When,
you doing this?
yes,
Why are you the homeschool teacher?
you are the bus driver driving all night, and then the head roadie setting up the show. When do you sleep, sir? Also, you now have to teach these kids and grade their papers. Legitimately, when do you sleep? That's too many jobs.
They
So,
only had enough money for like 4 cast members was the problem.
yeah. So, okay, they arrive in Chicago. Oh, can I also do one more complaint before we get to the plot?
Oh yeah, no, I mean go ahead.
It's
You're the
19
editor.
it's 1999. How is she on the internet on a tour bus on the highway?
Oh my god. There. Oh, I didn't even think about that. You're right. You can't do that in
You
1999.
can't do that in
She didn't have a phone.
1999. Yeah,
She
she's
did.
not on her cell phone on this website. She is on her very clunky giant laptop on a tour bus on the highway on the internet. Sorry, that was
I
just
agree.
like that was something where I was like just suspend all disbelief. Just get back to the show. I just had to announce that it really bothered me for a moment.
No, that's bothersome. I get it.
All right, so they get to Chicago and turns out the Ken Burns stuff you learned about this ship sinking in Chicago is clearly going to be the mystery for this.
Which is all true, by the way. I googled it afterwards. That is a true story. There was a big ship that sank in Chicago.
That
So
inf-
that is
that
based on a true story.
that infuriates me.
That's true.
Yes.
Please
Because
explain.
okay, so I'm going to do a quick Google. Okay, 1915 Chicago ship disaster. I have to Google this really quickly to get the exact number. Okay, so the ship is called it's called the Eastland disaster. It killed more passengers than the Titanic, and it's basically been forgotten. And that infuriated me. How many people died? Oh god, I want to get the official count of how
That number,
many.
get the number.
It's like almost 500 people, I think, drowned. It never left dock, Sam.
No, no, I get it. It was. I mean, like that's why it's a tragedy. I mean,
How
like they're not even on the ocean. It's a lake. I mean, it's a really big lake. One of
did
the Great Lakes, you
it
might
was
say.
on a canal that was like 100 feet wide. There was land in any direction.
So you're infuriated that the people in real life died in this boat tragedy.
844 people died 5 feet from shore. Yeah, I'm furious about that. The Titanic was in
Really tells
Arctic.
you.
Titanic was Arctic water in the middle of the Atlantic, and less people died than this boat that sank in a canal in Chicago.
Well, I mean, that you gotta. That's why we have better safety regulations now.
They were so close to shore. The thing, I don't even know if the canal was deep enough for the ship to be so submerged. Like, I'm just.
It's dark history, man. Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like, you go back in time, you end up on that boat. I bet you'd find a lot of very panicky people. I think that's probably what happened. I'm
Did
not going to do any research on this boat tragedy.
did you watch the IT crowd?
No, I didn't watch the IT
Oh,
crowd. I've
first
been
off,
recommended it many times.
watch it. There's only like 24 episodes across every season, and you're doing yourself a disservice. But there is one season. You know Chris O'Dowd, right?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Chris O'Dowd's girlfriend has a tragic past that she won't talk about. Her parents died in an accident when she was young, and it turns out she finally reveals, but he's not allowed to ask any questions. They're never allowed to talk about it again, but she tells him that her parents died in a fire at a sea park, like a Sea World aquarium type of a place. And he's like, What? And everyone he tells is like, they died in a fire at a sea park. And he's like, yeah, outside at the Sea Lion show. And it's just him, like, literally going insane throughout the episode as he tries to figure out how you could die in a fire at a water park. And like, he's like, well, maybe the balconies were made of wood, and they're like, no, it was all stone steps because water rots because of the immense amount of water. And he's like, then how did they die in a fire? And that is how I feel about this ship that never left dock. I'm like, how did you drown so close to land?
Mm.
Sorry, we've stuck on this way too long, but
I mean, clearly you're riled up about it.
24 hours later, I'm still very riled about this. I'm gonna do research, Chris O'Dowd style, and you're gonna like make a model in my office of this. And I don't know, man. It got to me. But this really happened, and that's cool that kids are learning about that. So I'm gonna let you take it from here while I breathe.
Okay, so I mean, the crux of the show is we have Fiona, she's our lead character. She's your quintessential late 90s cool girl. And I have a hard time describing it to anybody who wasn't there in the late 90s. And I imagine most of the people listening to this show probably were.
Also, everyone still considers her a giant geek because if you were a truly
Because she's
cool
using the
girl,
internet.
if you were a truly cool girl in the 90s, everyone thought you were like an alt freak. So like this almost is like a badge of honor for her being a cool girl to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, like, she's the cool. I mean, like, the sort of, like, alt cool girl. Like, I'm
That's
too cool for the sort of. I don't know. That's how I would describe her. She looks like a, she looks like a teenage girl on a TV show in the late 90s.
her favorite movie is probably Hackers.
I mean, that's my favorite movie. Hack the Planet.
I've never seen Hackers.
Check it out. It's terrible.
I heard
Um,
it's so hard to watch now because they're like a 456K modem. Oh my god. And it's just like, oh my god, a 456K modem.
no, it's a ridiculous movie. It's got your buddy Matthew Lillard in it. What was I saying? Her brother is Jack. He's played by Patrick Levis. He's I was looking on his IMDb. He hasn't been in anything that I really recognize, but he seemed so familiar. And I don't know if that's just because he was such a. I think maybe he was just such a stereotypical older brother character
He reminds
of that
me
era.
he reminds me of the older brother from Home Alone a lot.
Okay, I could see that. He reminds me of the older brother on the Goldbergs, or more contemporary um, comparison, but annoying. I like the older brother on the Goldbergs. I haven't watched that show in a couple of years, but on this show, this character is a little annoying. And then their buddy Clue. Oh, what a
Isn't
name!
Clue Sid from Toy Story?
He is. I looked it up. He is Sid from Toy Story. Um,
Because my wife saw his name and was like, holy crap, it's Sid. And I was like, how do you know that?
that is a deep. That's a deep level of trivia to know off the top of her head.
Right?
So, but he's Clue. He's the character I think I want to talk about for a minute. He is the sort of pre-stoner character. Whenever there's a show that's made for, again, your middle schoolers, and you're going to have a character who is not actually smoking weed, but is the kind of kid equivalent of smoking weed. Like, oh man, he doesn't smoke pot that we see, but he acts like he smokes pot. Like, there's one point where I don't know if it was in the first episode. I ended up watching a few episodes. He was eating a frozen burrito because he thinks they're
Yes.
better frozen. Okay, so that was first episode. And it's just like he's like, "Oh yeah, they're better when they're frozen." I'm like, "What are you? You're not even a cartoon. Like, people don't act like this, even when they're stoned. Like, it's such a like stoner stereotype, but not actually acting the way people act when they're high. I find those characters so frustrating.
I
He was
think,
no exception.
well, that was a big 90s thing. And I think it might have been started by like Step by Step. They had that, I think it was Step by
Oh,
Step.
Cody, the guy that lived
Cody,
in
the
the van.
nephew that like lived in the RV outside. Cody
Except I
was
think
like
that
that.
he was supposed to be high the whole time.
Yeah,
Cody
but
was
like
definitely smoking some dope.
that general concept stuck around where you have like that doofy guy.
That
iCarly.
character, but a teenager.
Yeah, iCarly had a similar character. Like you always see that meme where he's got like the smoothie in the ostrich, and they're like, "What you got there?" And he's like, "A smoothie." When it's clearly
I do not know this meme. I did not
really.
watch iCarly. No,
I
I
mean,
didn't
I've
watch
never seen
iCarly.
iCarly, but yeah, like he's stolen an ostrich and he's drinking a smoothie, and it's like them being like, "What do you got there?" And he's like clearly ignoring it, and he's like, "A smoothie." And but it's the same general character that Disney especially leaned into. Like family-friendly shows like to have that like fun stoner character, but like it's a family show, so he's not high. He's just a doofball.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah, it's
trope.
such a stereotype. I hate what?
He's a trope.
Yeah, he's a straight up trope. So what is the thrust of this episode? They're
Okay, so
playing the mom's band. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
the mom's band starts getting feedback during their sound test of a little boy crying, but nothing's plugged in yet. Obviously, this place is haunted. And she is such a teenage Agent Mulder. Like, she is such a teenage Agent Mulder.
Oh yeah, she goes straight for it's ghosts.
Yeah, she goes there. She like starts grilling the guy who owns the place. She grabs like her camera and her electrometers and stuff, and starts like going through ghost hunting. Immediately, like I want to believe little girl. I got huge Mulder vibes. Like it, like the ghost appears and runs through a wall, and she tries to follow it, and it's like, how could that be? This thing was like, we want to make the X Files for kids. And so she ropes in her brother and his best friend Clue because honestly, you're a bunch of kids that live on a tour bus. What the hell else are you going to do? Her brother's a skeptic, but Clue's a believer. And they just start searching for a ghost. And this had one of my favorite things to hate about that started in the 90s, the zoom in enhance feature. Where she's looking for pictures of this ghost boy in old pictures from the wreck and manages to find him, and she zooms in and enhances, and the quality of the ghost is better than the picture that she was zooming in and enhancing on.
Yeah, that was a. I mean, that's still a thing now
I
that they always
know.
do in shows. It's like enhance, enhance. I'm like, what do you think computers do?
It's
Although
it
now I think they can. I think that they're. I think AI is now smart
to a
enough that they can actually
degree.
enhance a photo
But
to a
yet,
degree.
not just her with like the zoom tool in 1999.
No,
So,
not possible.
anyway, it turns out this ghost boy was one of the many people on this ship who were not identified because despite not leaving dock, they still couldn't identify so many of the bodies somehow. And so she needs to figure out who this boy is. And so that's kind of the hunt to find out who he is so that he can be moved from an unmarked grave to be with his parents in the cemetery in the marked grave because they also didn't make it off the ship somehow. Despite looking like they were actually in a pretty good
Well, I
position
mean,
in
it
the
sounds like a
flashback.
lot of people didn't make it off. That's
Um,
true. They could have jumped.
yeah,
Was it in like the winter or something? They all freeze to death.
I
Was
mean,
that it?
so was, I don't know, man. Again, the Titanic got hit by an iceberg, and they didn't all freeze to death.
That's true. Leonardo DiCaprio did.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
plot wise, it's a pretty lightly plotted show. It's not. It's not. It's not a real thinker.
and
Everything about this show is 100% on the surface.
the brother is full Scully, where even though he gets beaten up and thrown out of a room by a ghost, he still doesn't believe in ghosts. And I'm like, you got beaten up by one, dude. So it was a trip. Watching this episode was a trip. I feel like I'm being overly negative on it. I'm not trying to come down on it. I'm just trying to like give my emotional experience. It was well done. It was fine. You know what I mean? I don't hate on this. I don't regret watching it. It was just I don't think I was prepared for it mentally or emotionally. I had no idea what I was getting into because I felt very similar honestly about the X Files.
Yeah, I enjoyed the show. I think because these characters or we're about the same age as these actors. Even if this show wasn't geared towards us when we were, wasn't geared towards us when it first ran because it would have been geared towards people a couple of years younger than us. Seeing people who remind me of people from that age, and I just, these are people who they're about our age around that time. So it was a real nice nostalgia trip. I think if a kid wanted to watch it today, I think there'd still be plenty. I think there's plenty to enjoy, not nostalgia wise. So I don't think you would have to be a person in your 30s to appreciate this show now. I think if a kid wanted to pick up So Weird, there'd be a lot for them to get out of it.
I mean, they might get
As a teenager today.
more out of it because a lot of my problems were things like a kid today isn't going to blink when they see someone on the internet on a bus, but I would.
No, because yeah, we were like, no, that didn't work that way back then.
But as
Um,
far as a kid today knows, that's always been available. So, maybe it's better
It's
for
like this is
kids.
not how GeoCities worked in the '90s, because that was definitely a GeoCity site.
Oh yeah, I was
Um,
watching how some of the features on the website that still don't exist to this day, and I was like, cool, cool, cool.
yeah, so I think it's worth checking out if you have a elementary school, middle school age kid. It's not offensive. There's nothing to like. There was nothing to get upset about in the show. I mean, content wise, I think it's still perfectly fine for kids today.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't get any vibes where I cringed for any reason except for like adolescence.
Yeah, which I mean, they'd be going through that at the same time anyway.
Yeah.
Adolescence hasn't changed. It's always the worst.
So, can we talk
You know.
about how weird this show is in general? Uh,
Okay.
I mean, if you
In
had
what
something if
aspect?
you had something to add to that,
Well, just thinking about nostalgia.
hmm
It was funny because I was reading some of the IMDb, some of the reviews people left on IMDb, and I'm so used to when you're watching one of these old shows, you go to read the review on IMDb, and it's somebody within the last couple of years who's commenting on it. But now I realize IMDb has been around for 20 years, so a lot of the reviews for this show are of that same era, and that
oh,
was really weird. I was like, oh, IMDb, which is a modern internet convenience as far as I'm concerned, has been around for 20 years. So I can read reviews about the show as if it was airing right now. And that was really kind of funny.
that's insane.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That's really weird. I hadn't considered that. I hadn't considered that
The
the
internet
user
did exist back then.
reviews. The top review is December 21st, 2000.
21 years ago.
Oh my god. You're so right. This review's from 1999. This is like before season 1 has even ended. This is an active review.
Yeah, it's like looking into the past because it's like, oh my god, this review because it's on IMDb. It looks exactly like a current review would look, but it's like it's from 20 years ago. And it's so it's one of those things where somehow from the 90s, the 70s seemed like ancient history, and that was because we weren't alive in the 1970s. But here I am in the year 2020 and the early 2021, and the early 2000s don't feel like ancient history. It feels like the early 2000s were just a little while ago, but it's like no, we're as removed from the year 2000 as we were from the 1970s back in the 90s. That
Yeah.
always messes with my head a little bit.
Yeah, that is exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh man. So these reviews are really pushing me to talk about the crazy history that and what you have coming for you. I mean, if you're gonna watch this whole thing, there's some things I don't necessarily want to talk about because I don't want
No,
to.
no, no, no. I already read about. I already Wikipedia a whole thing.
Oh,
You don't have to
sorry,
worry
we
about me.
left out a huge plot point. Her dad died when she was young,
Oh my God, you're
and
right.
a huge plot point for the first season or two is her investigating that because her father seems to have died of some weird paranormal thing. And that's why she's obsessed with the
Yeah,
paranormal.
right. And
So,
that's why her brother is so against it because he's like, your dad is gone. We can't get back to him. And that's a much healthier outlook, I think, than our main character who is desperately trying to contact her dead father.
absolutely, except that's like her. It turns out, she
No, she turns out to be right,
turns out to be
or
right
whatever.
and eventually does. So, yeah, the first season was a mid-season replacement. So there's only 13 episodes. And, they jump around. There's Bigfoot, there's will-o-wisps, there's a bunch of different type of things, aliens. And
Classics.
apparently season 2 gets even darker than the first.
Hmm.
And it was
They're
really
on the hunt for a serial killer.
it was by far the darkest thing on Disney and just a kids show of the time. Apparently, it was like a eerily darker tone for a Disney Channel show.
Hmm.
And season 2 seems like it goes off the rails. A lot of it involves her mom gets possessed for the season. Um, she time travels. She finds out her father was like murdered, and all these people that she tries to like investigate about it all get murdered, so they can't talk to her. And then her father shows up and saves her life. And it turns out he was a paranormal investigator like her. And then she leaves the show. She's like,
Oh
"Well,
yeah, she leaves for season 3, and it's a complete retool.
I solved the death of my father. I'm out." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're out? You are a minor who lives with this family on a tour bus." And she just pieces out, and they completely replace her with another random girl who is a different character.
Yeah, I was reading about that. I think that the actress wanted to go off and like try other things. I don't think she didn't
She
end up
did
going on to
not
do.
succeed, which is always
No.
sad to see.
Well,
But
I mean,
well, I
yeah,
mean, you
she
leave
could have
like
had
a
one more season
popular.
of a TV show.
Well, so season 3 bombed because they got rid of the dark, gritty tone, and there was a huge tonal shift in the whole series. It became more light-hearted and involved a lot more singing, bright colors. They introduced a romance subplot, like completely different show for season 3, basically.
Hmm.
And so I understand why everyone was like, what the hell? Like, so maybe if she had stuck around, it wouldn't have crashed, is what I'm saying.
Oh, maybe.
But they get rid of Clue after season 1, and his brother who just randomly shows up to take his place. Um, which I just love that. Like, hey, I know like the
So
whole
they like
family's
just
not
swap out the kids.
just swap out a kid. Well, that's what she does. She goes to live with her aunt in season 3, and they replace her with some other random kid who joins the parents' band despite being a child. And it's just such a trip to read about this.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see, how these shows kind of end up going south. I don't know. It's just one of those things you can't. Your main character leaves. So rarely do you ever get your best seasons after a main character being replaced. That way on a show that really centers around one person, you have to wonder why not try something else. Call it a day on that show and be like, oh, why don't we do a complete spin-off? Why do that sort of like light retool? Because I
Right?
think the actress or the character who replaces her had appeared in earlier episodes. I think it was they pulled her
Yes.
from episodes. So why not just do a completely new show around that character? And then it kind of makes sense if you're going to go more lighthearted. It's like, oh, this is a spin-off. It's slightly different. It's not the same show.
No, I
And I
totally
think you have
agree.
a better chance for success.
Because if you spin off, you can choose your tone, you can choose your story. You don't have that full expectation. But now you do. You know what this show is. I am happy that she left, but like her character technically has an ending. Like she resolved the stuff with her dad. Like her mystery is solved. So like she left at a good time, which not all actors do. Some actors are like, I'm out, and it's just like you just never get closure there.
Mm,
So you could have ended at season 2. That would have been a good ending. Like season 3 shouldn't have existed. It should have been a complete spin-off. You
yeah.
are correct on that. It's
Yeah, I'm gonna.
just
I'll sit down and watch the entire series so I can give a better, having a better opinion eventually.
fill me in. My wife will not tolerate that with the little TV time we have. Uh,
Fair enough.
so let me know. Because like reading
But
through it, it doesn't sound terrible. Like reading through the plot, it sounds insane. But I'm like, okay, all right. We got vampires, we got aliens, we got time travel, trolls, banshees, werewolves.
yeah, I mean the show is up our alley, and
Yep.
I think Henry Winkler produced it. Like at least a
Yes.
few episodes of the series were produced by Henry Winkler. I've been looking through the crew of the people who put this show together, and there's definitely some names like Henry Winkler. What it just seems kind of funny. Like, huh? Like, why was the Fonz an executive producer on this show? Um, Sean Levy, who produced, I think, a lot of the first season, he went on to do Stranger Things.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, let me see who else. Yeah, think those are some of the big names. Yeah, like one of the producers from, or what else did Sean Levy do? He did The Arrival.
Oh man, I loved The Arrival. I forgot about
Yeah,
The
so
Arrival.
I haven't watched it. I've read about it. I have not watched The Arrival yet.
Oh, I used to have a two-pack with The Arrival and The Arrival 2, but I sold it back when I was like a starving artist and I used to have to sell all my DVDs for gas money.
I think we're talking about two different things because I mean the one with Amy Adams.
Oh, I'm talking about the one with Charlie Sheen.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, The Arrival was a 1996 alien movie with Charlie Sheen, who's an astronomer who discovers intelligent alien life, but no one believes him. And it is like a weird sci-fi trip. It's got Richard Schiff. It's got a lot of big name people in it. It's a classic sci-fi film, but you
Hmm,
know, check it out. That one's good.
not
I haven't
familiar.
I haven't seen the Amy Adams one.
Okay, the Amy Adams one was supposed to be very good.
He is not in the
Um,
Arrival 2.
yeah. Or what else is this guy doing? Free Guy, which is about to come out or just came out,
Oh
getting very
wow.
good reviews. By the time this comes out, he'll be out. Yeah, so they're people who know what they're doing who are working on this show. Like there's some producing power here. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a decent watch for a middle school kid. It might be a little it might be a little too outdated, but I think just in general, it's still up. It would be still up a kid's alley.
I think it's got watch value. Even just as like an intro to the X Files almost. Like if you're a big X Files person and you wanna kind of do that with your kids, but they're a little young for the X Files, maybe like try them on this.
I feel like I was,
I feel like I already watched the X
I would have been
Files.
watching the X Files when I was,
I remember watching the X Files in like fourth grade.
yeah, probably way too young.
Probably way too young. Like the X Files was something that actually actively scared me as a child. Because I remember watching a
Yeah,
lot of
I'm with you.
season one in 1993, and like as an adult, I'm like, this isn't scary at all. But as a kid, I was like, me and my brother were like, whoa. And then like you turn the lights off to go to bed, and you're like, oh no. Yeah.
I think
So
uh, I think we got our point across on this one. This
yeah,
is yeah, check it out.
it's a
It's at
trip.
least it's a nostalgia trip for the parents, and I think it is a decent watch for a middle school kid now.
Try not to overthink literally any aspect of it. Uh,
No, that's what we're here for. We'll overthink it for you.
especially the size of the tour bus. Basically, if you think about it, we've already covered it. It's
Yeah, no, the tour bus makes no sense. It's a TARDIS. That's the only way that you could really even think of it. It's definitely a TARDIS.
all right. So I guess it's time to move on to adult time.
Adult time. What are you doing with your adult time, Steve?
Okay. So I picked up Lake Clarity again. I know I've talked about it before, but I hadn't finished season 2 yet. So I'm almost done with season 2. I had kind of taken a break from spooky podcasts for a little while. I just did a thing where I burned through like 5 of them and just needed
Mm,
a little bit of a detox. And I picked up Lake Clarity, and I'm just really enjoying season 2. Other than that, there is a place you and me have been talking about, and I feel like we'll fully talk about it after we do it in a future episode. But we found a place in Boston that does like a Legends of the Hidden Temple type of a thing, Bodaborg.
Boda Bong. Boda
Boda
Borg?
Bodaborg.
Boda Borg.
So Bodaborg, it's kind of like an escape room and an American Ninja Warrior thing mixed together, where there's physical and there's mental aspects where you kind of have to solve and get through and escape. Basically, it's like an escape room So there's one in Boston, and they actually have one called Spook House, which we've been talking about maybe getting a team together to try and escape the Spook House.
Oh
So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
they don't tell you a lot about what you're getting into. You basically walk in blind.
Which is
But
good.
all they say about this one is it's a dark and stormy night, and I think you're paranormal investigators who need to like solve the mystery and escape within a certain amount of time. So I'm very excited about that. We will report back to that. They have lots of other cool stuff besides spooky ones. They have like the floor is lava ones. They have like one that's actually set up to be Legends of the Hidden Temple. I think in America the only one is Boston. No, actually, it looks like there's one down in Florida as well. But
Well,
there,
we're not going to Florida.
yeah, most of them. Well, I don't know who's listening. Most of them are in Europe, but there is one in Boston and one in the Florida Keys. It looks like, and you have just a ton of different scenarios: escape from Alcatraz, you know, so on and so forth. I'm excited. So we're talking about doing that for adult time. And we were talking about the VR earlier. If anyone has VR besides roller coasters, I have a lot of VR horror games. And I was talking earlier about how your brain doesn't care that you're safe at home.
Mm.
That applies across the board. I have a hiking app where you just walk around this gorgeous mountaintop, but like the clipping isn't perfect, so you can actually walk over the edge, and your body will really fight you on that. Like it will.
That's terrible.
I know that I can walk over there and just look straight down and get a really awesome view, but my body is like, that is the edge of a 1,000 foot cliff. Same thing with a lot of VR horror games. One I will recommend is called Emily Wants to Play.
Oh, I already hate whatever it is.
Oh my god. So you are basically a pizza man who gets a call to deliver to this house, and the doors open, and you walk in, and the door slams behind you, and you are trapped in this house with a haunted little girl named Emily. And it is genuinely terrifying. We played it at a party one time, and the HTC Vive now has a wireless adapter, but when we played, you were fully wired. And one of my friends literally took off out of the room and ended up getting yanked by the wires, but also tripping over a child's toy and just eating it into a wall.
No,
Just because
that's one of the things
impulsive.
that makes me so nervous about VR games.
Typically, that doesn't happen, but like at one point I had it and I turned and the little girl was just right behind me, like literally, like right behind me, and I tried to punch her. Like I just swung. Like you have to play these without any. I was like just reactionary. I was like, oh Jesus! Like it is genuinely really creepy, and there's like three or four things in that one. There's like Emily, who's this little demon girl, but then there's an evil clown. There's like a porcelain doll that comes to life. There's a few different haunted things, and it is terrifying. But there, a lot of people make really cool indie things for VR. VR's still in the wild west of like development and possibility. It's a
I feel
really
like VR kind of like I felt like it like happened and then it just didn't end up happening. Is it still happening?
it's happening, but it's happening in a really cool way where it didn't commercially take off, so you just have a lot of passionate people creating really awesome things. Like there's this one that I think this German company made it, but you're in like a dark maze, but it's full of the weeping angels from Doctor Who. So
Okay.
they're like you'll turn a corner and you'll see like a weeping angel statue and it's not moving because you've seen it. But you need to go around a corner now. But you also need to look around this corner to make sure that there's not something over there. So it's all about like you constantly being paranoid about keeping the angles. And sometimes you just have to glance and then you turn back and they're like 3 feet from you suddenly. And it is so stressful and unnerving. And that's just like a weird indie thing that someone just put out. You know what I mean? So it didn't get the commercial success that I had wanted, but it's getting lots of cool little stuff like Emily Wants to Play made. So I'm in. Like they're not expensive. Emily Wants to Play is like $3 on Steam. Like that
Okay.
German one was
I've
free.
never
They
had
just
luck
want
with
you to
VR
play it.
games. I've
Um,
never had luck with VR games because of my glasses. I just feel
mm,
like I've never had a VR headset that fit comfortably over my glasses.
the Vive works with my wife's glasses. And it works. Actually, that party that we were at where we played this, I was the only person who didn't wear glasses, and we all played it. So the Vive might be the one for you. Just a
Okay, I can
thought.
check that out. I think.
Um, but yeah, no, I really, if you have access to one, there are a lot of free games or a lot of dirt cheap games that the immersion is just great because you can play Emily Wants to Play as a desktop game. You know what I mean? I can just boot it up without the VR, but the weird immersion of just you turn your head and there's literally something there watching you is it's a really good cheap thrill. So that's my
Okay, that
big
sounds like a lot
adult
of fun.
time. It's a lot of fun. It's also fun to do as a party because again, you can all see what they're seeing but on the screen and it's hilarious to watch people do it because the person in it is like in a very spooky situation and everyone else is just watching their friends in a very spooky situation. So that's also a really good detox. You come down and it's like you are now safe on the couch watching your friend
Mhm.
stumble through this stupid thing having a very stressful time. But check out that stuff. It's truly a treasure trove out there that I never see anyone talking about. So I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
Once
I don't have
once
a follow up for that. I don't have a follow up to your thing. Your thing was too cool.
well, you know what? You should come over one time and we should
I'll
do
come over
this.
and play.
Cuz my office
No,
is
no, I
huge.
like
You've
it.
seen my office. I actually have a VR corner set up in the room where you have like a 15 by 15 foot space to just walk around. So, we could make this happen. It is
All right,
it's
I'm
fun.
down.
I keep buying these games. I keep not being able to play these games because I don't want to play them alone. Playing these alone in a room is horrible. Have someone around. Just have someone around.
No, I get you. Yeah.
But
Okay. Yeah, somebody keep you safe. I like that idea. I will play next time I'm in Rhode Island.
cool. All right, so you have no adult time recommendations?
You know what I was gonna say? Check out BBC podcast. It's called the Lovecraft Investigations. They've done a couple of seasons. I think season three wrapped up at the end of 2020. It's basically a BBC modern day take on some old Lovecraft stories done as a podcast. So it starts as like it's an investigative podcast, and the mysteries that they're investigating are based on old Lovecraft. They're a lot of they're good mysteries. They're entertaining. They keep you hooked. It's definitely a podcast that I binged. I'm a season behind, so I need to give the latest season a listen. But definitely a fun, spooky mystery podcast to check out. Be the Lovecraft Investigations.
Awesome.
And like, unlike real Lovecraft, they don't get into all the anti-Semitism.
Even
Lovecraft,
better.
even better. Yeah, real
Lovecraft
Lovecraft,
without the
not so good.
racism.
Yeah, no. So a major bonus.
Nice. All right.
Well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, next time we talk to you, we will be out of summer and we will be into school time, I believe.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
maybe that'll be topical. But, enjoy the rest of your summer. If you take a road trip, be safe and, just take care. Do something spooky but not creepy for the end of your summer.
Yep. Find us on social media. We're RT Spirits Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for
All right,
joining
catch you next
us.
time.
I'm Steve,
I'm Sam.
and keep it spooky.
Keep it spooky.